My name is Margaret, and I need to tell you something that I still can't fully explain, even now, 2 years later. I was standing in my kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon. The dishes were done. The laundry was folded. I had my cup of tea, the one I always make at 3 o'clock, a habit I kept even after Gerald died. Some habits don't know how to stop. The phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, I don't know what, made me pick up. Good afternoon. Is this Margaret Collins? Yes, this is she. This is Dr. Harmon's office, Dr. Raymond Harmon. I'm calling because your husband Gerald was here this morning for his appointment, and it seems he left his phone at the front desk. We were hoping you could let him know so he can come pick it up. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Because Gerald Collins, my husband of 31 years, had been dead for 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days. I know the exact number because I counted every single one of them. Let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand what that phone call did to me, you need to understand what Gerald meant to me. We met in 1979. I was 23 years old, working at a small insurance office in Columbus, Ohio. Gerald walked in on a Friday afternoon to file a claim on his car. He had this way of smiling, slow, like he was letting you in on a secret. By the time he left that office, I already knew I was in trouble. We were married 11 months later. Gerald was not a perfect man. He was stubborn. He hated asking for directions. He could burn scrambled eggs 3 times in a row and still insist he knew how to cook. But he was mine. And for 31 years, he was the first person I saw in the morning and the last voice I heard at night. We raised 2 children together, David and Susan. We buried Gerald's mother together. We survived a house fire in 1998 that took almost everything we owned. We came back from things that would have broken other couples. Then Gerald got sick. It started small. Fatigue. He was tired all the time. Gerald was never tired. This was a man who woke up at 5:30 every morning without an alarm. So when he started sleeping until 9, I noticed. The doctor visits began in the spring. Dr. Harmon, a cardiologist Gerald had seen for years, found a problem with his heart. Nothing immediately dangerous, he said, but something that needed to be watched carefully. Gerald started going in every 6 weeks. He never let me come with him. You know how men are, especially men of his generation. He didn't want me to worry. It's just a checkup, Maggie. Stop fussing. That's what he always said. I should have pushed harder. In October of that year, Gerald went to sleep next to me and didn't wake up. The paramedics said it was cardiac arrest. Sudden. No pain, they told me. He was gone before he hit the pillow. I held his hand at the hospital, even after they told me he was already gone. I just wasn't ready to let go. The funeral was 11 days later. David flew in from Seattle. Susan drove through the night from Atlanta. We buried Gerald on a grey Wednesday morning under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. After everyone left, after the casseroles stopped coming and the sympathy cards stopped arriving, I was alone in our house for the first time in 31 years. And I learned what grief really feels like. It's not dramatic. It's not like in the movies. Grief is quiet. It's waking up and reaching for someone who isn't there. It's cooking dinner for 2 out of habit, and then standing at the stove realizing your mistake. It's hearing a song on the radio and having to pull over the car because you can't see through the tears. That was my life for 2 years. So when Dr. Harmon's office called and told me Gerald had been there that morning, I sat down on the kitchen floor. I don't even remember deciding to sit. My legs just gave out. My first thought was that it was a mistake, a clerical error, someone with the same name. Gerald Collins is not the most unusual name in the world. I'm sorry, I said, and my voice sounded strange to me, like it was coming from somewhere far away. Could you repeat that? Gerald Collins. We have him listed at this address. He was in this morning for his 10 o'clock. He left his phone at the front desk. A black Samsung. Gerald had a black Samsung. He had complained about that phone for 2 years, said the battery never lasted. I used to tease him about it. Ma'am? The woman on the phone said. Are you still there? Yes, I said. I'll let him know. And I hung up. I sat on that kitchen floor for 20 minutes. I couldn't think straight. Because here is the thing that kept circling in my mind. Dr. Harmon knew Gerald was dead. I had called his office myself the week after the funeral. I had spoken to someone there personally. They had sent a condolence card. I still had it. In the drawer in the hallway with all the others. So how was Gerald at his office that morning? I had 3 possibilities. 1, it was a completely different Gerald Collins and a strange coincidence. 2, someone was using Gerald's name and identity. 3, and I could barely let myself think this, Gerald was alive. I pushed that thought away immediately. I had been at the hospital. I had seen him. I had planned the funeral. I had signed papers. I had watched them lower the casket into the ground. But I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in our bed, my bed, staring at the ceiling, and that phone call played on a loop in my head. He left his phone at the office. Can you give it back to him? By morning, I had made a decision. I was going to call Dr. Harmon's office back, and I was going to get some answers. I called at 8:30 the next morning, the moment they opened. A different woman answered this time. I asked to speak with Dr. Harmon directly. She told me he was with a patient. I said I would wait. 15 minutes later, he came on the line. Mrs. Collins, what can I do for you? I took a breath. Dr. Harmon, your office called me yesterday. They said Gerald had been in for an appointment and that he left his phone. Silence. Dr. Harmon, my husband passed away 2 years ago. You sent us a condolence card. I need to understand what is happening. More silence. And then, and this is the part I still think about, he said, Mrs. Collins, I think you need to come in. Today, if possible. Not, oh my goodness, there's been a terrible mistake. Not, I'm so sorry, this must be a clerical error. Just, you need to come in. I was there by 11 o'clock. Dr. Harmon closed the door to his office. He looked older than I remembered. Tired, like a man carrying something heavy. And then he told me everything. Gerald had not died of cardiac arrest. Gerald had known for over a year before that October night that his heart condition was far more serious than he had ever let on to me. Dr. Harmon had told him he needed a surgery, an expensive, complicated surgery that our insurance wouldn't fully cover. Gerald had refused to burden me with it. He had refused the surgery. But that wasn't the worst part. 6 months before that October night, Gerald had come to Dr. Harmon with a plan. His business, a small construction company he had built over 20 years, was failing. Badly. There were debts I never knew about. Debts that could have taken our house, our savings, everything we had built together. Gerald had a life insurance policy, a large one. He had been paying into it for decades. Gerald had staged his death. He had found a man, a situation I still don't fully understand. There was a body, an unidentified man who had passed away. Gerald had used his connections, people I never knew he knew, to make it work. Dr. Harmon, and this is the part that broke something in me that I'm not sure will ever fully heal, Dr. Harmon had signed the death certificate. Gerald had been living in Phoenix, Arizona for 2 years. He had started over, without me. The phone left at Dr. Harmon's office. Gerald's real phone, the one with his real life on it. That was the mistake that unraveled everything. I won't pretend to you that what happened next was simple or clean, because the truth is that justice, real justice, rarely is. I contacted an attorney that same afternoon. Within 48 hours, federal investigators were involved. Insurance fraud, at that scale, is a federal crime. Dr. Harmon cooperated fully. I believe he had been living with the weight of it for 2 years and was almost relieved when it finally came out. Gerald was found in Phoenix 3 weeks later. I didn't go to the arrest. I didn't want to see him in handcuffs. I didn't want that to be my last image of the man I had loved for 31 years. But I did write him a letter. I wrote it in one sitting at the kitchen table, with a cup of tea that went cold before I finished. I told him everything. What those 2 years had done to me. What grief had felt like. What it meant to mourn someone who was choosing to let you mourn them. I never heard back. Gerald pleaded guilty to insurance fraud and a list of other charges. He was sentenced to 7 years. Dr. Harmon lost his medical license and received a suspended sentence in exchange for his cooperation. The insurance money was recovered. After the legal process, a portion came back to me. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to keep the house. Enough to breathe. David and Susan, my children, were devastated in ways I'm still watching them heal from. There is a particular kind of grief that comes from learning that someone you loved chose to leave. It's different from losing someone. In some ways, it's harder. But here is what I want to tell you. And I mean this with everything I have. I am okay. Not because what happened was okay. It wasn't. It was a betrayal so deep I don't have proper words for it. But I am okay because I discovered something in those 2 years of grief. And then in the year after the truth came out. I am stronger than I ever knew. I built a life alone. I learned who I was without someone else defining me. I made friends I never would have made. I started painting again, something I had given up in my 30s. The woman who answered that phone call on a Tuesday afternoon and sat down on her kitchen floor, she got back up. That's the part Gerald didn't plan for. I've shared my story with you today because I know that many of you have been through loss, real loss, and I know how sacred grief is, how much you give of yourself when you mourn someone. What Gerald took from me wasn't just 2 years of my life. He took the grief itself. He made it into something false. And that is something I have had to learn to make peace with in my own way, in my own time. But I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want to know what you think. If you found out that someone you had grieved, someone you had truly mourned and loved, had chosen to leave and let you believe they were gone, could you ever forgive them? Not for their sake, but for yours. Leave your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And whatever you're carrying today, whatever loss or question or uncertainty you're living with, know that you are not alone. Thank you for being here with me today.